Hello, hello. What a week it's been. We got the Schumann resonance going crazy. The planets just don't stop moving. It seems like every astrologer is saying, this is the week, something's going to pop, blah, blah, blah. And this morning I just woke up with a message that the path forward is now clear. So I ran right to my table to pull some cards. It feels like we've been doing timeline hopscotch, jumping from timeline to timeline all week, all month, all year, whatever. But things are coming into focus. So like I said, I woke up with this message. The path forward is now clear. So I ran right to my table to pull some cards. I have my stack of major arcanas, my stack of court cards, and my stack of minor arcanas. So I pulled one major to show the archetype that you're dealing with. And this is the strength card, right? So this is what we're moving towards. Then I typically just pull one court card to see the role that you're supposed to play in this. But today I felt prompted to pull two because I do feel like there's another character in this story that's like beyond the field of awareness. So for the role that you're supposed to play, I pulled the Page of Swords. And then the role that someone else is playing is the King of Pentacles. And when I pulled the King of Pentacles, I heard the word fixer, that this individual is a fixer, which comes from, I think there was a show on Showtime for a while called Ray Donovan with Liev Schreiber, and he was like a Hollywood fixer. So if you ever got in trouble, you could just call Liev Schreiber and he would come through and fix the problems. And it's something like that, where it's like somebody that you're not aware of is aware of you, is aware of your circumstance, and can and will fix it, but there's almost like a timing or like it's like they don't want to interfere with the process. I don't know. It's like they don't want to rob you of something, but in the same respect, it's like there's a safety net that they're like standing behind you with a safety net that you're not even aware of. So let me jump back into this strength card. So this is the archetype that we're moving towards. And I'm seeing this as like the light at the end of the tunnel, right? So the path forward is now clear, but there's this blinding light at the end of the tunnel that you can't actually see beyond, right? So it's like this, I want to call her the high priestess. This high priestess that's behind this light is not in focus, right? It's like all you can really see is this blinding light. And you can see this lion that's at the foreground here, right? It's giving me the energy of like intensity. One analogy that I use a lot is that it seems like as our manifestations are pulling into the station, it can approach with the energy of a freight train, right? It's loud, it's intense, the earth shakes with it, but it's a beautiful thing, right? It's what we want to move towards, but it is really, really intense. And I just have to imagine like what the birthing process must feel like for a child that's in the process of being born, right? Like a little baby. Like not only are they being squeezed at every side, not only is the mother that they've been inside of for 9 months screaming, right? Because most likely they are pushing, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden there's this blinding light that they've never experienced before, right? So it's like that's the best analogy that I can use for what it is that I feel like this energy is as we approach it. But the other analogy that I was getting was that final scene in The Wizard of Oz when they enter the wizard's throne room and all they can see is that holographic projection of the wizard, right? And it's very scary and very intimidating. But once you move just beyond that curtain, right, if you continue to approach and you don't stop your momentum, you get beyond that curtain and you realize that it's not just that there's nothing there, but there's actually an ally there, right? Because ultimately the wizard wound up being an ally, right? All things considered. So that's kind of what I'm getting with whatever the energy is that's just beyond this. But with the high priestess kind of talks about secrecy, right? To a degree, where it's like the high priestess knows something that you don't know, but you don't even know that the high priestess knows this, right? It's like that's typically the high priestess. So the role that we're supposed to play in all of this is the Page of Swords. So you're coming up as the Page of Swords that's looking at this light at the end of the tunnel. And typically the Page of Swords would be somebody that's very guarded. At the bottom of the deck here, I have another Page of Swords, right? So you can see how he has his sword kind of in front of him as if he's ready to strike, right? Whereas here, I'm really more focused on this thing that's kind of been put down at the ground, where it's like swords talk to me about scripts, right? So it's like putting down a particular script, because the Page of Swords is typically somebody that has a degree of negative anticipation, right? Almost like a Nine of Wands, where it's like an assumption that something bad might happen, or because the Page of Swords does tend to be guarded or jaded or concerned about something, right? So they're analyzing, they're strategizing, and but in particular, they're putting the sword down and they're just observing this process, right? And what I feel like it's saying in terms of putting the sword down is do your best to avoid over intellectualizing the energy as you approach it, right? Because it's like there's data beyond this light, this glaring light, that there's data that you're not receiving, right? So it's almost like trying to make an assessment of something, but you're missing information. So that's why it's almost saying, like, don't jump the gun on trying to assume what's going to happen on the other side of this, right? If you have a particular fear script, if there's anything like that, it's almost like saying, let this energy surprise you. There's a surprise on the other side of this energy, a positive surprise. And I it's talking about keeping the momentum up, but again, not manifesting against yourself with a fear script. And the best way to say that, again, not to over intellectualize it, but almost just to kind of feel the emotions of it. Because I'm just thinking of like certain times that I've created an energetic headache for myself because I got so caught in trying to make sense of things that when I finally let that go, and shut off the mind and just stepped into the heart and let myself feel things, I was able to process the energy and move through it. So the trick is kind of stepping out of the mind and jumping into the heart. So one exercise that I'll use for that I can't remember where I got this from, and I apologize to whoever might have come up with this because I can't give credit where credit's due. But the exercise that I'll use to jump into my heart is that I imagine myself disconnecting from the past, disconnecting from the present, and disconnecting from the future. So the past is all of the identity programs that basically create the foundation of my worldview, right? So who I think I am, where I think I am, what I think I am, all of those different programs that created me, right, so to speak, and my worldview and my perception of what is and blah, blah, blah. In terms of present, that would be any kind of active storylines that I think I'm currently connected to, right? Because it's like all of that is just mental. Most of it's not actually happening, but it's really just happening here, right? So I disconnect from the past, I disconnect from the present, and then I also make sure that I disconnect from any future expectations that I'm projecting onto the future, right? So it's like I want to deactivate those storylines as best as I can, and I just visualize that over and over and over again until I feel like I've released from it. And then I usually visualize myself dropping into my heart, and I just have a visual that I use for that, and I just kind of feel it. And then once I finally feel like I'm in my heart, that's where I start doing my timeline jumping, and I'll kind of almost play Goldilocks in a type of way, in terms of kind of feeling a timeline that is conducive to what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, right? So it's like Goldilocks, where it's like you jump into different timelines and you figure out if it's too warm, too hot, too cold, whatever, and I help myself navigate through that. The best example that I can use in terms of a time that it worked immediately was I was in a work situation with a coworker that was a wonderful person, but they were just in a lot of pain. And as a result of that, they brought that pain to work every day and made the experience impossible for everybody. Nobody could get anything done because of this individual. They were a human obstacle. And ultimately, this person was not supposed to be where they were. They weren't supposed to be in the physical location that they were, in this job, anything. It's like they were not on their right timeline. And that's why they were in so much pain. So I was not approaching it from that perspective for the first couple of months. I was just angry, right, as we would typically be. And so finally one night I laid down the sword. I let go of all of those scripts. I did all of that where I disconnected from all of the active storylines. I jumped in and was just heart to heart with this individual, helping them navigate a timeline where they could get from point A to point B without resistance, right? So it was like they had things that they wanted to do, but they were afraid to do those things and thought that it was impossible, right? So it was really just about opening up the possibilities, opening up the potentialities, way showing, right? Being a way shower and trailblazing and saying, not only is it possible, but everything will align and support you and yada, yada. The next day, I went into work and this person that was a human obstacle, like embedded into the matrix, put in their resignation, was gone within 2 weeks, everything aligned, and this person was able to move on to their highest and best timeline. And also immediately before everything shut down in 2020. So it was like absolute perfect timing for this individual to get where they needed to be. It was beautiful. So that's effectively kind of what I'm seeing here in terms of a trick, in terms of doing that for yourself, right? Maybe this is, maybe you know, you're in a good place and you're observing someone that's not, but for the most part, I want to say that this is you trying to manifest for yourself, right? 11:11 on the clock. Um, So, in terms of releasing and integrating the proper timeline that we want to move ourselves towards, it would be again disconnecting from the past, present, and future, dropping into your heart, feeling that out, and then navigating the timelines and reminding yourself from that perspective. Because at that point, it's like you're just in your heart, right? You're in it, not of it, over it, not in it. And reminding yourself that not only is the way forward possible, but that everything is aligning to support you when you need it. It will happen with ease and grace and all of those things, because it's like it's the concept of pronoia, where it's like everything in the universe is colluding and conspiring to work with you for you in your favor. It's like the universe is rigging things on your behalf, right? It's gaming the system to help you forward, which I wholeheartedly believe it's doing for all of us right now. And and what's interesting about, so this page of or excuse me, this King of Pentacles that feels like the other character in this story is, again, it's giving me the energy of somebody that's like right behind you, but you're not aware of it. Again, like there's some sort of fixer that can fix this situation, but it's almost like if they directly interfered and showed up and just gave you a check or something like that, it wouldn't be as effective as like, it's almost like the energy of like an angel investor. If you've ever heard of an angel investor, where it's like they don't really take credit for what it is that they do, but they just kind of do it, but you never know how it is that they did it, or that it was them or something like that. Maybe I'll come back to that in a moment, because again, it's this high priestess. I feel like it's the same energy where it's like secret, but the high priestess is all about non-interference. It's like she doesn't want to spoil the future for you. So it's like the high priestess is never going to give you a date, because much like we've all learned in the conscious community, as soon as somebody throws a date out there, forget about it. It's never happening, which is why I was very concerned about those date videos that I posted. But things did shift. So I guess sometimes it works, but all things considered, the high priestess is never going to tell you that success is guaranteed, because she knows that if she says that, you're not going to bring your A game and success will not be guaranteed. You're going to get trampled, right? So the high priestess is going to tell you that the odds are against you and that you need to bring your A game, because she sees success is guaranteed, but she knows that it was only guaranteed because you showed up full force, right? So it's something like that, where it's like, this individual is doing their best to avoid taking the wind out of your sails and taking the credit for what it is that you're about to accomplish, right? Because there's something about that where it's like they don't want to eclipse the accomplishment in it all, which, you know, I'm sure, because I know the voice in my head is like, you know, girl, take the credit, just write the check, right? But all things considered, I get where it's coming from. So the next three cards that I'm seeing in the spread, so these are my three minors that are showing me the action steps forward, the path forward, right? I have the Ace of Wands, which is the trailblazing energy, right? So clearing the path, but also new potentiality, right? So this is, like I was saying, dropping into the heart and crafting a new timeline or potential for yourself by letting letting go of the other one, right? But it's like, in terms of the laws of conservation of energy, it's like nature hates a vacuum. So if you want to get rid of that timeline and release it, then you have to replace it with something else and something viable. So it's like swapping out an old thought form for a new thought form, right? So releasing that so that you can integrate this new potentiality, which is the first card that I'm seeing here. And then the next cards are the Six of Cups and the Five of Pentacles, excuse me. So I'm kind of seeing this in reverse, where it's like you're this Five of Pentacles here, right? Nearing the finish line, but bruised and battered, right? Out in the snow, wondering if and when, right? But here's this energy of this King of Pentacles kind of right here in the background, right? It's there, it's observing, it's present, but you yourself might not be aware of it, right? You're really just kind of focused on the worst of your circumstance, right? Which is okay. I mean, it happens, right? When we're in the thick, it's hard to focus on anything other than the thick. I will be the first one to say that it's like when I am in a mood, Lord have mercy, to shake me out of a mood. I mean, you can get me a Carvel's ice cream cake. If you get me a Carvel's ice cream cake, it's going to help. But other than that, I don't really know what's going to help. So the trick is like getting out of your mind, right? But it's like that's the most frustrating thing to hear sometimes when you are in a place of pain, because it's like the mind is a powerful thing in a place like that. But so effectively, what I'm seeing is, so you're pushing through, you're making it forward, but there's this energy right behind you with the Six of Cups, right? And you can see how it's like it's coming in, it's rushing behind you with this energy of relief, celebration, reunion is another energy, right? So it's like I do feel like this would be somebody that you know. I'm not getting the idea of like spirit guide or ancestor on the other side or boo boo. It's like I feel this is somebody real. This is somebody that you do know, that is aware of you, that can and will and maybe already is fixing this situation unbeknownst to you. And it's like you can kind of see here that how his arms are extended. It's almost like he's the one that's holding this Ace of Wands, the Six of Cups, right? It's like he's bringing the Ace of Wands behind you, right? So it's like you're technically the one that's clearing the path forward, right? But it's like this individual is kind of like taking up the rear, if that makes sense. It's like they're the the I don't know what the word would be, but it's like there's, if it's like a military operation, there's the group that goes in first, and then there's the group that follows behind them and makes sure that they're secure or something like that. It's basically it's basically that, where it's like, because it feels that way. It really feels like you're the boots on the ground doing something, right? The paratroopers that have just landed in the hot zone, right? And they're at HQ, at headquarters, kind of watching this on a screen, but little do you know that they have like air support or something like that, right? So it's like, all you see is what's happening on the ground in front of you, but because they have this aerial view, it's like they can see these other enemy forces or obstacles or whatever around you, and it's like they're remote striking these things. I'm not a fan of a drone strike or anything like that, but that is the analogy of what's coming through, where it's like you're not even actually aware that like these other things are being taken out or cleared or whatever it may be. But it's very much so giving me the energy of the parable of Orpheus and Eurydice. So that was from the Greek Orphic Mysteries, where it was about the journey through the underworld, of how to escape the underworld and make it to the land of the living. And in order to do that, it was like you had to move full steam ahead. You couldn't look back, right? If you look back, you turn into the proverbial pillar of salt or whatever. But you have to push through the fear threshold, right? You have to push through the wizard's curtain. You have to push through this really intimidating light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because it's like there actually is no obstacle there, but it's just like the mind is making a mountain out of a molehill, if that makes sense, right? It's like the mind is creating or just assuming that there's obstacles there, right? But it's like in all of those stories of the journey of the underworld, it's like when you pass through the fear threshold, it's the fear that would stop you that comes up, right? So it's different for all of us, but it's always going to be that thing that would hit you, whatever it may be. But it's I feel like it's hitting you it's hitting you in the value center, in the worth center, something like that, where it's like, because of the light that's coming off of this strength card, right? It's like light talks about illumination, visibility, vulnerability, right? So it's almost like this concern that it's like, as you're stepping closer into the light, you're becoming more exposed and more visible and more vulnerable. But what you don't realize is that this King of Pentacles is right at your back with the air support, right? You don't realize that you have the air support, but the King of Pentacles is right on your heels with that. And the overall energy at the bottom of the deck was the Three of Wands, right? So this is somebody literally on the cliff overlooking what it is that's happening, watching these different things align. And quite frankly, it's almost like the obstacle is going to be removed before you're aware that it's been removed, so that you continue to move forward as if it's still there, with the kind of courage, strength, determination that it would require to move forward as if it was still there, so that you get there, realize that it's no longer there, but still get to maintain the pride or the feather in your cap that you get from knowing that you pushed through. It's like there's something about the courage that's very important, right? It's reminding me of the last thing that my grandmother ever said to me before she passed away, was that she said to me, Jonathan, you're going to find your courage and write a book. And Swords talked to me about scripting, writing. So when she said that, I it might be a real book one day, right? I would love that. But it's the story of our lives, right? That's what we're writing. That's where we need to find the courage to write our story. And I think there's just something about getting to that finish line and having the story be that you didn't know it was safe. You didn't know it was guaranteed. You didn't know it was fixed. You had to believe that there was actually some risk, so that when you get to the finish line, you get that reward of knowing that you didn't stop, right? And that nothing was handed to you. Because that's almost how it's being kind of like rigmarolled, is that it's like everything is being taken care of so that you're safe and you're fine, but they're making sure that nothing is, that you're not being robbed of the accomplishment or the achievement or the sense of achievement, right? Because it's like, you don't want to end this story thinking that you couldn't have done it on your own, so you needed the assistance or the help or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with assistance or help, because there's not. But it's about the mind, right? It's about dismantling the mind, laying down the sword, so that we can navigate with our heart, right? Because I think that's what this entire deconstruction of the matrix process is about. It's about getting rid of the matrix mind, right? That thing that kind of is a prison of our own design, right? And the only way to actually truly dismantle that is to push through it. And it's like, if we get to the end of the finish line and we think the only reason why we got there is because somebody carried us, then it's like we don't feel, again, it's like a worthiness issue, right? Where it's like the Lion, the Scarecrow, Dorothy, everybody, they got to the finish line. They had it all along. They had it all along. But if the wizard had shown up in his hot air balloon day one and said, "Oh, girl, you got your shoes," or whatever, she wouldn't have. It would have robbed all of them of everything that they had to go through. Right? It was like they had to go through the dark forest. They had to go through the field of poppies. They had to go through the witch. They had to go through all of that in order to have to realize that they had it all along, right? Because they wouldn't have been able to get through the forest, the poppies, the witch, if they didn't have the courage, the brains, the heart, and the slippers or whatever the entire time. You know what I'm saying? So it's like at the end, the wizard does not give them those things. He tells them that they already had it. But it's like that external validation is effectively what it is. So maybe that's really what comes in at the end, is the external validation of being recognized for what it is that you brought to this process, right? Really interesting. So I'm going to continue to pull cards and create an extended. I'm going to pull what's next and why. So let me start. It's going to be a full Celtic cross, right? So we got 10 cards in the Celtic cross, but let's just start with what's next and why and see where it's going to start off. So what's next? The Ace of Pentacles. Why? The Moon. Interesting. And then I've got the Emperor at the bottom of the deck. Interesting. Interesting, because this Emperor is definitely the King of Pentacles. And I feel like this is the Emperor kind of like waiting at the other side of this finish line. And I'm almost seeing them, like this orb that's in his hand is almost like a stopwatch, where like if you just finished like a 5K race or whatever, it's always about your time, right? You want to make good time. And I almost feel like he's laughing. Like there's some kind of like cheeky kind of look on his face where it would be the kind of coach that would say to you like, you son of a gun, like you did that. But it's almost like you only moved that quick and made that kind of time because you thought you were on your own. Okay. And what's next and why? Ace of Pentacles. Okay, so what is the King of Pentacles going to hand anybody? The Ace of Pentacles, the key to the new timeline. Okay, period. What's next? The Ace of Pentacles, a brand new timeline that's stable, right? It's not just an Ace of Wands where it's like potential, but it's actually viable. What's next and why? The Moon. So the why would be the Moon in terms of instinct. The Moon usually talks to me about the energy of instinct, right? Because it's like animal migrations are guided by the Moon, right? It's like, well, that would explain the strength energy in terms of the High Priestess, right? Where it's like, it's almost like the Oogie Boogies and the creepy crawlies and whatever it is that you're running from is kind of being projected at you so that you move quick. I feel like something like that is happening, where it's like you almost get there and it's like, yeah, sorry we had to project those creepy crawlies, but you wouldn't have moved as quick. So, you know, it is what it is, but in hindsight, you're going to appreciate it. It's kind of that. So thanks, Spirit, for scaring the heck out of all of us, but it is what it is. So this is what's next and why. I'm also going to pull what you're seeing in your environment, the relevant past, how Spirit is involved. Because again, I don't think that this is necessarily spirit. I feel like this Emperor is a 3D character, right? Spirit's involved for sure, they always are, but then we're going to see the next choice point, the role you're supposed to play, any other external characters, yada yada. So check that out in the extended, and I will see you guys later.